When Britain consolidated its control over large parts of India during the 18th century, the Indian subcontinent became an integral part of the British Empire. During the following 2 centuries, India experienced a series of major famines, particularly in the 19th century, coinciding with British economic and administrative policies that impacted agriculture, trade, and food distribution. Historical studies indicate that famines in British India caused more than 10 million deaths between 1870 and 1943, with estimates for each famine varying considerably. Not all famines were the direct result of British policy. Drought, crop failures, and natural disasters played a significant role in many. However, the problem lay in how the colonial authorities responded to the crises. Taxation, trade, and grain export policies, along with inadequate or delayed relief efforts at times, affected the ability of impoverished populations to access food. Therefore, historians argue that interpreting famine solely as a consequence of drought does not provide a complete picture. Economic and governmental policies largely determined who could afford food and who could not. One of the most famous examples was the Bengal famine of 1943, which occurred during World War II. An estimated 3 million people died, according to recent studies, as a result of starvation, disease, and malnutrition. The causes of the famine have been the subject of much debate. Economist Amartya Sen argued that the problem was not simply a lack of food, but rather a collapse in the ability of millions to access it. Other researchers, however, have presented evidence emphasizing the importance of crop failures and agricultural damage that preceded the famine. Modern studies generally agree, however, that British war policies and trade and supply restrictions exacerbated the disaster. Herein lies the most controversial point. In recent years, an estimate of nearly 100 million deaths has emerged based on a recent economic study that employed the concept of excess mortality. The point is not that there are records proving that Britain directly killed 100 million people, but rather that the researcher compared mortality rates in India during the colonial period with what they might have been, under certain demographic assumptions, had India continued on a less deadly path. Therefore, the figure of 100 million deaths is a demographic estimate of potential excess deaths, not a documented count of victims killed on British orders. Furthermore, historical mortality estimates, especially for ancient famines, carry a significant margin of uncertainty. There is no historical consensus that 103 million Indians were killed by the British. This is a stronger formulation than the available evidence suggests. The figure closer to 100 million is related to estimates of excess deaths during the colonial period, which is a subject of research and debate, not a definitive, agreed-upon number. The Bengal famine alone caused approximately 2 to 3 million deaths, or around 3 million according to more recent estimates. Data on the famines themselves are not entirely accurate. Historical sources were limited, and even expert estimates vary considerably. Therefore, if you want to frame the video historically accurately, a better title would be, "Did British Colonialism Cause the Deaths of 100 Million Indians?" She then clarifies that the figure is a controversial estimate of excess deaths, not a proven number of direct killings. Conversely, it is also difficult to deny that colonial policies contributed to the exacerbation of some famines and food disasters. This is a matter supported by numerous historical and economic studies, although researchers disagree about the extent of responsibility and the cause of each individual famine.